All right, today we're back at it with another showdown. This time it's between two of our favorite little bikes, the Santa Cruz 5010 and the Yeti SB135. One of these bikes uses a mixed wheel setup, and the other rolls on two 27.5-inch wheels. And today we're going to be doing some back-to-back testing in some terrain that frankly is going to challenge these bikes just a little bit. We've got a pretty steep, rough, rocky, loose section, and then we do have some terrain where these bikes are designed to go. We've got some flowy, bermy, jumpy, smooth, fast, fun single track. So which one's going to be best for you? Stick around to find out. All right, I'm back to the garage. All right, so all of the back-to-back testing is done. We've done a bunch of laps in pretty varying terrain, from rough and rugged to smooth and fast and fun. Now we're gonna dive into where each bike shines. While these two bikes are very similar, they are definitely not identical. The biggest difference being the 5010 is a mullet setup, the SB135 is a full 27.5. The SB135 also has quite a bit more travel, at least at the fork, and it has 5 millimeters more at the rear. Head tube angles are very, very similar. Geometry for the most part is very similar. 5010 is about 10 millimeters longer in that entire wheelbase. And the biggest noticeable difference for me is how much higher that front end sits, given, the same amount of spacers underneath your stem. I'm not going to cover all of the details of both of these bikes because I've already done it in their individual reviews. Check the links in the description if you want to go watch those. Actually, it might be a really good idea to go watch those first and then come back here. So let's get the hard part out of the way first, and that's climbing, especially early season climbing when I'm pretty out of shape. Luckily, both of these bikes make climbing quite a bit easier. They've got great efficient suspension platforms, they've got great traction, and pretty good geometry and comfortable body positions. One of them, though, does kind of stand out as a little bit of a winner in my book. The SB135 would be my pick if I placed a high priority on climbing performance. It's slightly more efficient and offers better technical climbing ability due to its agility and handling characteristics. It's able to pick its way up almost any climb imaginable, except the newly formed spring runoff waterfall tripped me up quicker on the 135 than it did the 5010. So the lesson here is, as long as your trail isn't under a foot of water, you'll make it up anything. Overall, the handling, body position, suspension platform on the 135 seem to be a little better suited for climbing. Its suspension feels snappy, responsive, and that body position is a little more forward leaning. I did notice a bit more weight through my hands on that bike than the 5010. So the 5010 loses a little bit of that snappy acceleration, but it makes up for it in traction and control. Its suspension feels more active, providing even more grip and comfort than the SB135. As a tall guy, I also appreciate the taller front end with a little bit more upright body position for me. I notice less weight through my hands and arms and shoulders, which on a long ride can be pretty nice. It is very composed on rough climbs, I'll give it that. The suspension design really smooths things out for you. When things get a little tighter and a little twistier, that's where the 135 is going to shine though. So it's not really fair to compare weights on the two bikes that I have because they are different builds, but everyone always asks and everyone seems to care. I personally don't, but here are the weights for you. So the 5010 comes in at 33.9 pounds, and don't freak out, that's with pedals, with tools, and a bottle cage. So quite a bit lighter, naked. The 135 comes in at 34.3 pounds, so just a hair heavier. So overall, both of these bikes do a perfectly acceptable job on the climbs. Neither one of them will be winning the next XC race, but both are very competent climbers. Now we get to do the fun part, and on these two bikes, it's especially fun. Downhill on a short travel bike can be incredibly fun, especially if you're on the right trail. Luckily, both of these bikes really expand what the right trail means for a short travel bike. They're fun, they're lively, they're agile, they're playful, but the surprising thing is they are both far more versatile than I ever thought they could be. Again, starting with the SB135, it's easily one of the best cornering bikes I've ever ridden. For me, there's a perfect sweet spot between agility and stability. too agile and the bike feels twitchy, and on the other hand, too stable and you can't do anything other than go in a straight line. The SB135 hits that sweet spot right on the head. It's plenty agile and offers just the right amount of stability to keep you from wadding up in every corner. The 5010 is also pretty spectacular in the corners, but I think the 135 wins, especially on the tighter ones. The 5010 does take the cake though on high speed and bumpy corners. So like the 135, it strikes a great balance between agility and stability, although it shifts a little bit more towards the stability side. While it takes just a little bit more effort to initiate a corner, once you've got the bike leaned over and the corner started, it carves this perfect arc all the way through the corner without having to make all these little micro adjustments. I think it's that bigger front wheel and the longer wheelbase that help with that confidence and control in rough, high-speed corners. So despite having less travel and having a lighter duty fork, the 5010 just rides a little bit bigger. What I mean by that is the suspension feels deeper and the bike feels more grounded when things get rough. I suspect three things are at play here: big front wheel, longer wheelbase, and the taller front end. They all give the bike a certain degree of confidence, especially on steep, rough, rugged trails. The suspension curve is also slightly more progressive on the 5010, which may contribute to the deeper feeling ride quality. When it comes to flowier terrain, where both of these bikes were actually designed to ride, they're an absolute blast to ride. The 135 offers a bit more fun in terms of handling and cornering and steering, but I'd have to argue that the 5010 has a little bit more pop in the suspension. To me, that means if you like taking creative lines and slapping corners, the 135 is probably gonna be your jam. But if you like logging air miles, hop on board that 5010. My big takeaway from these two bikes on those ascents is how they maximize fun without too big of a penalty in stability. I knew they'd be good on jumpy, bermy, flowy trails, but I did not expect them to be as good as they are in rough terrain. So having a bike as fun and lively as these two are without giving up all of that stability is a pretty cool thing. So let's go over a few pros and cons here outside of ride quality. The biggest one, and I know this seems a little bit silly, but the glove box on the 5010 is pretty cool. Internal frame storage is a really nice touch. It's something I wish Yeti could have put on all of their new bikes they've been releasing. That said, I've been finding creative ways to carry all of my tools for the past, I don't know, forever. So it's not a deal breaker at the end of the day. Next up, we've got price. SB135 is going to cost you more than a Santa Cruz 5010. There isn't really a perfect comparison in price because the builds are slightly different from brand to brand, but for a pretty comparable build quality, both with XO, T-Type, Eagle drivetrains, the Santa Cruz is about $1,500 less. Another pro, this time for the 135. The 135 offers a better fit for smaller riders, with their extra small and small frames being completely unique to those sizes. Those two sizes maximize standover clearance and seat post insertion. Really small riders are probably going to fit better on the 135. Once you get into the, I think, medium through extra large, the standover gets pretty comparable. SB135 also offers more versatility when it comes to aftermarket shocks, including coil shocks. The 5010 with the shock tunnel is pretty limited, just to air shocks, and certain ones won't fit, like the Fox X2. On the 135 though, you've got clearance for a pretty wide variety of shocks, including coils, except on extra small and small frames. Those will not clear piggyback shocks. All right, so which one of these bikes is best for you? I feel like both of these bikes fill the same category. They're fun, lively little bikes that pack a pretty hefty punch above their weight class. They offer exceptional handling, cornering, and plenty of good times out on the trail. SB135 takes the handling one step further though. It's razor sharp and it has perfect agility, I think. The 5010 leads slightly more to the stable side of the equation. I am equally impressed at how well each bike punches above its weight class. Neither one is an excuse to not ride a difficult trail or to bypass features that are normally reserved for longer travel machines. They both could easily be the one and only bike in my garage. That said, I think certain folks will be better served by one or the other. Starting with the SB135, I think this bike is better suited for riders with tight, technical, slow speed terrain. It's easier to manage at slow speeds, handles tight turns better, and offers better technical climbing ability. It's also going to be the better option for the folks who are a little more vertically challenged. as it's likely to be a better fit. The front end and standover are lower in those smaller sizes, helping those shorter riders not feel too upright and uncomfortable on the bike. As a tall rider though, it doesn't mean you should ride off the 135. I'm a tall rider and thoroughly enjoyed the different ride quality that the 135 unlocks. It opened up a completely different style of riding, which I hadn't experienced in a really long time. SB135 is going to be for the rider who wants all of the agility without sacrificing too much stability. With a longer wheelbase, deeper riding suspension, and a big front wheel, the 5010 is going to be the better bike for those who just want speed and stability. Despite having marginally less rear wheel travel and significantly less fork travel, the 5010 seems to ride bigger and burlier than the SB135. Handles rough terrain and steep trails with a bit more composure. Taller front end and longer wheelbase are likely to credit here. That stability does come at a cost, however. The 5010 takes a bit more effort in the corners and on the climbs. I'd have to say the 5010 is for the rider who wants a little playful bike that they can ride just like their big bike. And what I mean by that is you don't have to tiptoe around the rough stuff or avoid it altogether, but you get the quick handling and playful attribute that comes with short travel bikes. All right, time for some awards. And for whatever reason, we're going with dog breeds. 5010 wins the English Bulldog Award. Short, stocky, tough as hell. SB135 takes home the Beagle Award. It's tenacious, energetic, and kind of big for its size. Well, that's gonna do it. Thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time.